Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Podcast for the Boys. I'm here with Evan as usual, but we have a new member of the podcast today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Gary Laser Eyes.
Gary Laser Eyes. That's his real government name. So today, we promised this in the last episode, we're going to talk about conspiracy theories. Now, setting this up, I left my notebook that I usually have with all the information on it. So we're just going off the top of my head. Um, but So how we got into this is the other night, me and Evan were at my house just chilling, watching some movies, and by the other night, I mean literally like a night ago, and we were like, you know what? Let's do some research for this podcast. So we watched 2.5 YouTube videos, and now we're experts on the topic. So the first conspiracy theory we're gonna discuss is the Titanic. So do you guys have any thoughts about the Titanic before I ruin it for you?
It was a boat.
It's true.
It shouldn't have sunk.
It shouldn't have.
But it did.
There's some weird stuff going on with the passengers. I have to add that.
If you don't know about the Titanic,
Talking about the Leonardo DiCaprio.
No.
that
That's not real.
steamy car scene.
Ugh.
So if you don't know what the Titanic is, it's a boat, and it sunk, even though it was not supposed to sink. And that's the gist of it. So the conspiracy, or one of the conspiracies, goes that J.P. Morgan, who is the owner of the company who made the boats and made several boats, pretty much made the Titanic as an insurance fraud scheme. And so what he did was he had this other boat at first. I forget the name of it. You'd have to research it because I left my notes. But was it the Olympia? I think it was actually called the Olympia.
Keep talking. I'll look it up for you.
All right, we're gonna look it up live. But I think the boat was called the Olympia, and it had gotten in a crash before the creation of the Titanic, and it was still like not just shattered and destroyed, but it now like leaned to the left and could barely hold itself up, and it was their own fault. So insurance wouldn't cover it, and so they basically just spent tons of money on this boat. That is useless. And so, when this was happening, the Titanic was already in the early stages of being planned out, and like it had blueprints. And so, the theory is they came up with this scheme to, instead of actually building the Titanic and finishing it, they just changed the Olympia a little bit.
Here's your adding. It is the Olympic.
The Olympic. Okay, the Olympic.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
So they took the Olympic and they just made it kind of look like the Titanic a little bit more, and they used it and called it the Titanic. And some things about this theory you'd have to look it up, of course, but and do your own research because we're not experts. But the pictures of the Titanic don't match up the blueprints of the Titanic. I believe the Titanic was only supposed to have 12 portholes. And the boat that the Titanic supposedly is in pictures has 14, I think, which the Olympic had. So the theory goes that they swapped the boat out, and then they crashed it on purpose after they put insurance policy out on it to get all their money back on the Olympic.
So are you saying it was an insurance fraud thing that went wrong? So they weren't trying to actually kill people. They were just trying to get the money.
There's more to that. So the Titanic, or the Olympic, whichever, was nearby this other carrier owned by J.P. Morgan that in his company. That was also like a passenger ship, like a luxury cruise line that was empty. It was a huge ship. It could carry 220,000 people, I believe, and it was just a few miles away from them, and it was completely empty. And it was headed towards them. And the theory is that this boat was headed there because they knew they didn't have enough safety measures and life preservers and things like that to save everyone on the ship. They actually had a empty ship ready to rescue everyone, so there would be no deaths or anything like that. But that boat got intercepted just by another ship passing by, and it couldn't get by in time. So those people did end up dying. And also, J.P. Morgan and many people who either worked for his company or just had inside information didn't actually go on the ship. They backed out within the last few days. So, what are you guys' thoughts on that? Do you think it's possible that the Titanic or Olympic could be an insurance fraud?
Would you like to go first?
Yes. I don't know. I don't believe. Yeah. No, I don't think so.
You don't think it is?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Do you think there's anything shady to do with the Titanic, or was it just like a hap accident? And
Yeah, because I heard. I mean, the only thing I heard that there was like fire. There was a fire on board, and it was having like problems before they ever took off.
right, which would make sense if it was the Olympic.
So they should have never left. But I don't know.
So, once again, I'm gonna agree. I don't know, but I will say, as far as going back to like blueprints, working in a career field where you have to like go through blueprints and find schematics and all this other kind of stuff, 99% of all of them I've seen are never 100% accurate versus the final product. So I could see their blueprint. Like, would you say it was supposed to have 16 windows?
I think it only had 12 and it was supposed to have 16 or something along that line. Anyway, it had more or it had less than it was supposed to.
So I could see that being just a mistake in the final product. I've seen that a lot. The not having enough safety equipment, I could see that as just being, it's the unsinkable ship. We're going to skim some money somewhere, so we're just not going to put the proper amount. So, but I mean, it could have been an insurance fraud or insurance scheme.
Right. Now, to Evan's point, he agreed. Like,
I don't believe in the rescue.
The ship wasn't ever like in the best conditions. Right? They should never have left. So why did they leave, even though they know they didn't have the safety protocols to save people?
The weird thing to me is how all those people flaked out on the tickets. The really powerful people.
Yeah, that's just a fact.
Strange.
Like that's you can look that up. That's
They just didn't show up. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, see, I can't answer for that kind of stuff because I just can't.
I mean, I guess we'll never know.
The ship not being, 100% ready, then, like I said, skipping corners, that could have just been them trying to save. Because it was probably just, during that time period, easier to say, hey, we're going to take these few little risks versus, hey, we might have to refund, I don't know, 1,000 people on the ship, however many was on the ship.
You have to refund them if they're dead.
What, yeah.
I think 1,200 people died, according to this article. Let me double check.
Including Leo.
Yeah, R.I.P. buddy.
Um,
There was plenty enough room on that door for both of y'all, but whatever. I think that's the real conspiracy theory.
Here's the problem, right? There weren't enough doors on the Titanic. Like, they should have had a few more doors.
They should have put more doors.
I don't understand why they, got the damn... What do you call those that the officers use?
Well, but I don't know.
When they arrest them?
Oh, handcuffs?
Why do they handcuff him to that pole? That's fucked up. That's a hazard.
They was trying to get.
Are we going back to the movie?
Yeah,
we're going full movie. Right?
Yeah, if we're going to the movie, I could
bothers
criticize
me
all that
every
kind of
single
stuff.
But this was in 1912 when this boat sank. That was a long fucking time ago. They did not have the technical advances. So maybe I agree with you. Maybe they just had an idea what they wanted to build. But
and you also don't have a lot of your, like now, your cruise liners, there's federal regulation. They have to go through all kinds of inspections.
Right.
Back
they
then,
didn't have to do that.
they didn't have to do that. So
It was April 15th, 1912.
Was it a door or a plank? Did they confirm? Like, was it actually a door in the movie?
Are we back to the movie now?
Oh yeah, we're back to the movie for sure.
I think it was just a random plank. I don't know if it was a door.
Okay, I didn't know that.
We're going back to that. Like I said, Rose, you could scoot your little ass over and let Leo on top of that.
Here's my problem with that movie, right? Car sex
She
is
was like,
so
God,
uncomfortable.
this low life peasant, this was supposed to be a fling. I can't let him live.
Why did she
Then I'm
let him put him
committed.
in the water? Like, why didn't she just put him on there with her? I don't understand that.
I think we're getting off topic.
She just didn't care.
I want to know how she survived. Like, I know she's the less capable of the two. I'd have a hard time believing she would make it all the way to shore on that thing. I feel like she'd just fall over and drown.
She should have had Tom Hanks with her.
Tom.
I mean, look at him in Castaway. He'd have made it.
He would have gotten her out.
True.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
So
Down the rabbit hole you go.
So my takeaway from the movie really was that they made car sex look way better than it is.
Oh God, it's cramped.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, you're hitting your head on everything.
But anyway, yeah. So another thing about the Titanic, this one's a little more goofy. It's not as government, fraud kind of stuff. There's also, I don't know that much this is true or not. There was a Egyptian mummy on the ship that they were taking with them for tours or something. I don't know why he was there, but there's the idea that it was cursed because there's this Egyptian tut that's like, like, hey, you're carrying my body across, like,
kind of like a Bermuda Triangle style.
Well, not just that, but like, they're sacred in death. The Egyptians think so. Mm-hmm. So they had his body, like, not just like, put away and like being preserved, but they had him like on a insurance fraud boat, just like sailing down the ocean.
Wouldn't that have floated?
Yeah, is the mummy okay? Well, it's like solid gold.
But it was inside of something that would have floated, casket. Right? Yeah, casket.
Like that's what I'm talking about. The casket's probably solid gold.
Okay.
So he probably
in the deep part of the ship too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's another thing. It wasn't even like somewhere for people to see it. It was like in the stowaway part of it, which is really weird. I don't know if that's real. I actually have, as much as I love theories, I have a hard time believing there was like an Egyptian king on that ship for no reason at all.
Yeah, that doesn't seem.
But I do like the idea of like, instead of like the Titanic movie, more of like a ghost ship idea where like they're just like hanging out and like an Egyptian ghost starts like just terrorizing them. But who knows? Well, I feel like there was one more thing about the Titanic we wanted to talk about. If I had my notebook, I would know. But
could I see it being an insurance fraud? Back to a little more seriousness. Yeah. Yes, I totally believe that somebody would have done something that crazy though. Mm-hmm. So the idea that is true. I mean, I could see that being relevant.
It's plausible.
And they were so like power hungry and they had no checks at the time. Like,
it is
J.P. Morgan definitely could have done it.
It's J.P. Morgan. I mean, his name today in 2021. Like
they didn't have the regulations that they do now.
Exactly.
So he could have definitely he could have felt like he had the power to do that for sure.
And it was a weird time in history, just in general. You had the build up for World War I was going on at that time. I mean, it could have been a whole list of reasons why they could have wanted to do it on top of that, not just money,
That was actually another small theory. I wasn't going to talk on too much because it wasn't that big, but there was the theory that like they used the money for like World War I preparations, but
it could have been a hoax to say that a German U-boat sunk it. You know what I mean? Who knows? So that's a little outlandish. I'm just saying they could have went many ways with it.
So here's an original theory. I didn't read this or watch any video on it. What if this whole thing was set up just to make $1 billion movie out of? They're like, we need a terrible, tragic accident to make a movie out of. I think that might be the most plausible thing.
Were movies even a thing in 1912?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm not saying they were gonna make it. They were gonna make it right then, but the government knew like someday we can make.
They're gonna make a movie out of it.
I mean, it is like the third most popular.
This is
movie.
gonna be a trilogy book. That's gonna sell a ton.
I want that demon to possess me. That's gonna make a great scary movie. That's what people say too, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys? Actually, we were sitting in AT&T yesterday on our new phones, and we saw the Mummy playing on TV. How would you guys feel about a Mummy Titanic crossover?
Like, what are you talking about, the Mummy with Tom Cruise in it? Well, if it's that movie, then trash. That's how I feel about it.
So okay, imagine.
I think a ghost one would be better.
Well, I mean, that had like spooky stuff in it. So imagine this, right? The two climaxes of the movie like take place together. The ship's starting to sink into the iceberg. Everyone's like panicking. Also, a giant sand demon is sweeping across the boat, like trying to eat you.
Or a kraken. Maybe it wasn't an iceberg. Maybe it was a kraken.
The big one that's like, they don't know if it's actually in that.
They say it's prehistoric, and they claim it. What is it, in the coral reef? It's where it dwells.
Right.
That would be a good movie. The Titanic getting sunk by a kraken.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
That's something I can go see.
I'm not too convinced that the government just didn't script out the Titanic movie yet, but I guess I could see a kraken. I mean.
Oh, I thought we were talking about making a movie about an alternate.
No, I think she's talking about
story.
Like a real kraken came up and.
Didn't they
we're talking about movie ideas.
No, I thought she meant a real
No, we're
kraken.
being serious. We're talking about making a movie about a kraken taking the Titanic.
In real life, did they blame the captain for running into the iceberg?
No, he's blameless.
He is?
No, I don't know.
I didn't know if it was in the movie or in real life. If they because that would be interesting if they shifted all the blame on him, because that's the easiest person to blame.
He probably died.
Like
I think he went down with the ship, if I'm not mistaken. That's like a real thing.
Like, he was probably a captain who had been a captain his entire life. Like, he's probably.
And see, I could see them doing that, getting like a lesser known captain, somebody that maybe has had a rough career, and putting him in charge, and then blaming it on him.
But I think they put it seems like they put all the blame on the captain.
I found the blame. Captain E.J. Smith. From the beginning, some blame the Titanic skipper. him for sailing the massive ship at such a high speed through the iceberg heavy waters of the North Atlantic. Some believe Smith was trying to better crossing time. Oh, he was so the other conspiracy is they were trying to race another company's big ship that was also on the water. So they were trying to beat the location.
And that was definitely not the captain's choice. So I'm back in. I fully believe the conspiracy.
Oh, he's back. All right, we're back.
I 100% believe J.P. Morgan did it.
They said they were trying to...
Like they were horse racing their boats. They're like,
yeah.
go, boy, go.
Yeah,
throwing points in the ocean.
If they put all the blame on the captain, that would be the easiest... Yeah.
All right, guys. I have a...
Well, Papa, we're going to make history today, boys.
Oh, apparently there were ice warnings. He did not slow his ship when the ice was reported directly in his path and allowed lifeboats to leave sinking ships.
How old was he at the time, the captain?
Huh?
How old was he at the time?
Give me 1 second.
If he's like a 60-year-old...
I have an idea. I've never been on a yacht or any big carrier ship. If he was really going like way too fast, wouldn't the passengers like be having a pretty bad time, bro? Like wouldn't they be like splashing around?
Actually, because I asked that question because we were supposed to go on a cruise and then coronavirus happened. I asked that question because I know somebody that goes on cruises like twice a year, and she said, believe it or not, you can't
no matter
tell.
how fast you go.
Well, I didn't ask her about exact speeds or anything like that.
Like I'm sure if you're going like the normal speed, you can't tell. But if this man's like horse racing his giant ass boat across the Atlantic, wouldn't they be like the old people playing shuffleboard feel a little tension? They'd be like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
He was 62 years old when he died on the Titanic.
He had dementia. That's the problem.
So he had probably been a captain for like 30, 40...
61 years.
So you're telling me he just randomly decided to be completely careless and just try...
This is my last sailing, boys. Let's make it fun.
Y'all, there's something crazy about the Titanic I just read. 340 bodies were recovered, 1,500 people killed, and about 1,100 missing. They never found them.
Dude, they still haven't found, I think, all of the Titanic.
Yeah, but I can imagine the suction from that ship going under. There's probably... That could have ended up bodies all across the,
Especially when you include the science behind, like, the mummy and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a factor. They're part of the Legion of the Dead now.
What if they're not dead? They're just part of Davy Jones.
What if they found Atlantis?
They're just part of Davy Jones' locker now. There's a giant underwater battle between, like, the Egyptian undead and the Davy Jones fish boys. I don't know if this is supposed to be a serious podcast, but I'm definitely more of a comic relief, I would like to say. No, this has never been serious.
They never can be serious.
This is the second episode in a row we have talked about ghosts haunting vehicles. So, but yeah, that's the pretty much the sum up of the Titanic. It may have been insurance fraud. It may have been a horse race. It may have been a ghost. We don't know.
But we will blame the captain. The blame is for sure on the captain.
The drunken bastard.
100% wrong.
He said that's what you get for shotgunning 3 beers and snorting cocaine off a hooker's ass. Do you guys know in the movie they play their instruments when they go down? Imagine how hard that would be.
It says they really did do that in real life.
The instruments?
They said a lot of the things in the movie were actually like
the band actually they
actual factual supposedly.
How do you play something like while you're drowning? Like how do you play an instrument?
Probably just a sense of comfort. Trying to find something you especially when you're that much of a musician. I mean, it's muscle memory, so they were probably just trying to do something to get their mind off the fact that they're about to die. So
maybe that's how they invented dubstep. They just started mashing keys, and they're like, "Hey, that sounds pretty good," and they died. And
old dubstep.
We didn't get dubstep again until Skrillex.
What does the fox say?
All right.
Still don't think a fox says ying 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 ying. No, I disagree with that. That's the next conspiracy theory.
Foxes have this really weird like it's like a mix between a cat and a dog trying to growl it. That's really weird.
What if you heard a fox? That's what I'm trying to find out.
I live in the wilderness. I used to hunt fox just to survive. They used to hunt me. So I guess we know who won.
Why do I want to think about Harry Potter when you say that?
Well, I don't know.
Going into that forest, that's what I think about.
Why did it have to be spiders? So the next thing we were going to talk about, and this is my personal favorite. I could talk about this for like years. I could talk about this so long that we could go to the moon. We're going to talk about how we never have been to the moon. Never.
Well, y'all haven't been.
I mean, I've never been to the moon, but...
No one's been to the moon. It's an empty orifice of crater. and maybe aliens.
You should just say the conspiracy theories around.
I don't know if you've ever seen that movie about the Nazis on the moon, but they're up there. You know they are. That's a crazy movie.
I'm not scared of any Nazis.
What's it called? It's like
The
Iron
Giant.
Steel or something like that.
I remember that part of the Iron Giant. It was pretty good.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that movie.
So the theory goes that, of course, we went to the moon during the Great Space Race of the Cold War, which was pretty much just post World War II, just for a little history lesson. And Russia and America were racing to go to space, get to the moon, yeah, all that kind of stuff. And Russia, from their terms, I also think they were lying, had gotten pretty close to like getting people into like the moon, or at least close to it. And so America was like, shit, dog, we gotta win, I guess. And so even though America had actually been pretty far behind in the space race at this point, and we were like pretty like unsuccessful in doing this kind of thing, we just happened to like do a mission that had tons of problems like beforehand, and still successfully get people to and back from the moon with no complications during the whole process. The theory is that, of course, this is fake, and it was filmed in California.
In a studio.
Yeah, in a studio. So do you guys any post thoughts before we get too deep into it? No?
I can add some.
Okay.
So, my biggest thing when I watch the video is you can see like some type of, I would call it a studio light, like hanging in the reflection.
Yeah, okay.
Now, my thought is they did make it to the moon, but the video quality wasn't great because like it's space, so they made one to have something to prove that they went. That's my theory.
Like they lost the camera footage or they couldn't record it.
Right.
And so they just used this to like...
I believe they went to either they didn't do it right then or they went later, but I believe the video is faked in a sense, but I think it's for a good reason to have proof.
So what she's
Or
talking...
they saw aliens
I think that's a lot more... I think that's a lot more reasonable.
Like if they saw aliens, think about it. They would like debunk a lot of people's religions. The world would go crazy. So a lot of people believe that's the reason they faked the video is to hide that.
They didn't want like basically everybody who believed in like an organized religion to like just ransack the world all in one night. So they were like, you know what? We went to the moon and there was nothing there.
Yeah, they say the birth of was it unitology from Dead Space happens.
Yeah. So the first thing she was talking about, in one of the pieces of footage of them on the moon, and one of the astronauts' visor, you can see what is exactly like a stage light. You know, people have tried to say, oh, it's a piece of an asteroid, or it's this or that. It is, I mean, perfectly, like, it is a light with 4 little flaps around it, like you would see in Hollywood. That's exactly what it is.
And then you can see, like, I want to call it wires. It wasn't their tether, like, to the ship or whatever. It was, like, wires
like
going straight up.
Thin wires.
Like, so they could bounce around, you know?
Equipment?
No, theirs were very chunky because they had to like hold them like to the ship.
Did they never wire themselves into anything?
Yeah, but theirs is a big like tube almost.
Like you can see it because it's doing the oxygen.
You can see that one, yeah.
But could like any of that stuff just have been their equipment?
I mean, it's possible.
Also, what about it just being obscured, like an obscurity in the actual video?
See, that's what some people said. Some believe like the video was just distorted because like it's from space.
Yeah,
you know?
Like if it being like something so weird and unheard of, like it could be anything. The one that I think really bothers me is when you watch videos of them walking around and jumping and stuff. You can tell by the way they're jumping. Well, it's supposed to look like no gravity. It actually looks a lot closer to someone pulling them up with a little like invisible string. Like the way they lift up looks very much like someone else is lifting their body. Like their legs don't do the work. There's even one where a guy falls over and he like not jumps up, but his like body like leaps forward like someone's pulled him up, which is very weird.
Yeah, if you look at the video, it's weird.
That would be hard though because you don't really have comparison to know what the gravity on the moon is.
Exactly.
So.
People were like, well, you just don't understand the gravity, whatever. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that's a good point.
Because your only comparison is the moon landing.
Exactly.
So
they've also could have been on there for a long time, so they'd already tried everything. Like they'd already done backflips and all the normal stuff, and then they were like just laying on the ground, did something weird, like did a push up, and it may have looked weird.
And then there was another thing where the crosshairs, like when you film something, there was like crosshairs. Well, it was behind an object. It wasn't in front of it. Like it wasn't on top of the video. It was behind an object.
Like it had been photoshopped or whatever the equivalent to Photoshop was in the 40s. I don't know. I'm just saying.
That's
1970?
I'm just yelling dates.
Oh.
We're just telling you the evidence that we know. It was like the crosshairs, the little white lines were like behind the object, which doesn't make sense.
And the two weirdest ones to me. Now these two are my favorite parts of like I guess evidence or whatever. There are no stars anywhere in any footage or video they have. Even though if you look up in the sky, there's stars like most of the time, even like from where we are. And you would think if you were in space or like closer to like a body that isn't like populated with like things like clouds and smoke and things like that, you could see perfectly into the space and see the stars and things like that. But it's pitch black, like there's a black sheet hung up. And then the last one that I can think of off the top of my head is there are rocks laid throughout the moon. You can see in the footage that have letters on them. Like one in particular is very clear, is the letter C. And people said, well, that could just be like a formation in the rock or whatever. But it looks so perfect, like it was made like by a man, and just drew it in. And it also
like a studio, like this is rock C, rock B, rock A.
If you're doing like a play, right, and you have props set up, you would mark them with a letter or some kind of symbol to know where they go. So like if you were filming it and you stopped and started filming again, you could it wouldn't look weird if you like didn't know where the props went. Like you have a spot to put the props. Like you have C on the floor and the prop C goes on that.
But if they're gonna fake something as massive and as influential and everything else is the space landing, I would think that they would have
thought about that.
They would have watched the video by experts. God knows how many times they would have.
But they were racing, so they might have rushed.
That's true. They didn't have a lot of time because they were trying to beat Russia.
But who knows? I mean, you never know. But it's just like interesting to think about. That's why I like conspiracy theories. I just like thinking about that weird stuff. Like that really could have happened.
Now, this is true. Now, this is just a fact. There is I think it's a picture of a guy who's doing a gravity test to get into like the program, and there's a picture of him, and then they took and flipped the picture during the space race. They flipped the picture completely around, and they like did a little editing on it, and said that he had been to space, like not the moon, but just he was outside of a ship in space, and people were like, "This is just the flipped photo of that guy training." And they had to come out and admit that. They said, like, NASA said, yes, that's true. We
lied,
lie about that picture, and we did, edit it. So that is, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they've done.
So it's not unheard of for NASA to lie. They're not like the Boy Scouts of America telling all truths.
No.
So I don't think it's too outlandish to think it's possible they lied. It's just.
Oh no, I'm not saying that it's not possible.
Yeah.
Anything's possible.
So what do you guys think? What do you think? We've been to the moon? We've not been to the moon?
Just your overall feel.
I don't think we have. I'm just kidding.
No.
What
do you think?
I personally have no idea.
Yeah, I think we have.
I could see us going. I could see us not going.
Well, if you even think there's a moon, you're a fool. There is no moon.
That's that what it is? It's just a giant hologram. I like it.
You guys ever seen Dragon Ball Z? It's just like up there, yeah. But yeah, I personally, I think one of two things. I think the more likely thing is that we just haven't been, and they wanted to look better than Russia, because we still want to look better than Russia today. So they just lied about it, and then Russia was like, well, whatever, it's over now. I don't care.
Well, I know a lot of the Soviets were glad and relieved because they were funneling so much money that they were. I mean, they couldn't gotten where they could barely afford to do it anymore. So
I think that was it, right? Like everyone
there was more
just
of a sense of relief. That it was over with, because it was really, I can remember which president it was. I think it may have been JFK, but he saw it as a metaphorical. It was going to be what I'm trying to figure out how to word it. So like whoever won the space race was a metaphor for who was winning the Cold War, I guess you could say.
Right.
So that's why they amped up NASA to try to beat the Soviets. And the Soviets, of course, had to amp it up as well. But then, before you know it, you're falling multi-billions of dollars, and that gets expensive.
Right.
That's the problem with the world right now. Not our country or Russia or just anything. The problem with the world as a government body is that America and Russia are constantly just having a pissing contest, and the rest of the world is just watching.
I think now it's turning more towards us and China now.
So, sometimes it's North Korea.
Putin's I think he's just sitting back waiting for us to collapse. So
America's always in a pissing contest with somebody else.
That's true.
It sounds like.
Every other country, if someone will step up and try and have a pissing contest with America, America has been pissing since the 30s. We need to get hydrated. But yeah, that's that's pretty much how I think is like we probably just were ending it to end it, even if it was fake, and everyone else was like you said, was like, finally, Jesus Christ, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of going to space.
See, I believe in aliens too much, so I believe the theory that they saw aliens, so they made up a video. To
I think
show
that's
everybody.
Possible. I just don't think that's what happened, but it makes sense.
They found microorganisms on Mars, didn't they?
Something like that.
So I mean, that shows us that it's perfectly possible for there to be life on another. Because it's a planet in another galaxy that they theorize is another version of Earth. So
it's
that's
like Earth something. I forgot what they call it.
I wonder if their America's as bad as ours.
Their America's as bad as ours. I don't know.
Like I bet they're Russia and ours.
I bet you South Park's right, and they're all just up there watching Earth as a TV show, laughing at us.
Yes.
I believe it.
That traumatized me watching that episode. I'm like, what if that really happens? I'm like rethinking my whole life.
Rick and Morty's got it right.
Saw the Ricks and all the Mortys everywhere.
We watched a little YouTube movie not long ago called The Theory of Everything, which is kind of hard to find. I think they kind of YouTube's kind of been hush hush quiet about finding that. But they talked about aliens being real and how some higher ups who were part of NASA and other programs that study space have met aliens, and the aliens would say things like you guys stink, but not you don't shower kind of a stink, but more humans get off an aura of hatred and just negativity.
Well, I watched this is a history documentary on the History Channel a long time ago that they found what they thought was Neanderthal skulls, but the craniums were more like a basketball, they were more rounder and they were a lot bigger. And they claimed the theory was that that's how man discovered fire and started getting intelligent, was because there was visitors from another world. That's where these craniums came from. And then they, I guess, taught intelligence and all this kind of stuff, and taught the Neanderthals, and that's how really the spark of humanity started, I guess you could say.
In that video we watched, they talked about the Neanderthals a little bit.
Here's an interesting thing, and I didn't really plan on talking about this, but it's something to mix them into each other. So with aliens, it's actually come out recently where people kind of think that religion can be tied into aliens a little bit, and I'm not a real religious person, but I won't talk too much about what we believe personally.
But I am an alien person.
That's a rabbit hole to go down.
But anyway, so with the Greek mythology, Roman mythology, things like that, they believe there were demigods, half god, half mortals, who were special, lesser than gods, but still way powerful, compared to the average person. It's actually, some people have started this train on TikTok and stuff that I've seen, where they believe angels were actually demigods, or some angels, or certain versions of angels were actually demigods in the Christian belief. They weren't necessarily all made in heaven or sent here. Rather, certain early on angels, were just more like the gods of Greek mythology, and just would come to Earth and have a little one night stand with Susan down the way, and.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And they would make a Christian demigod, kind of like the story of the little man and the big man and the slingshot.
Well, they claim it was the video game Death Stranding. I think they call them Ludens. They're humanoid type god, spirit type deals. That was actually, those were inspired by the Romans didn't call them Ludens, but I'm just going to call them Ludens.
Right.
They believed that there was a humanoid race of advanced people that were kind of demigods.
Right.
And that's what inspired the Ludens from the video game. So I could see that being totally...
And, people always will say, aliens helped us build the pyramids, and aliens did Stonehenge, and aliens did this and that. What if it wasn't aliens, but rather all-powerful gods or demigods that we can't even we don't understand, because they were Super Saiyans, they had these powers that we can't imagine if Hercules was down here, he by God could build the pyramids if he was real. So maybe demigods did build that kind of stuff, and we just see them as aliens because we don't, when they see something weird, we don't know what to think.
Anything foreign
especially
is considered an alien.
Yeah, especially if they had powers. If a motherfucker came down to Earth and started shooting like flames out of his fingertips, I'd think it's a fucking alien too. I mean, but yeah, that's something to think about. Maybe aliens are just demigods. Maybe Greek mythology is the correct religion.
Who knows?
I'm gonna start praising Zeus every night before I go to bed.
Well, I was a Roman in another life, so hail Jupiter.
What do you think? What's your religious belief? Could you tell us everything you believe right now?
I'm good.
Do you think aliens and demigods are one and the same?
I have no idea. I don't think so.
And I think too, not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
it all goes back to the interpretation from the people of the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We all interpret things differently, just like people argue, like take Muslim and Christianity. I think that Allah and God, I don't think that. I'm just, from what I'm trying to speak of.
Your opinion, right?
They're different interpretations of Allah, God, the same thing with
they're all the same
Buddha.
thing.
It's just different interpretations of a one God. So,
right. Angels, demigods,
so
Atlanteans, whatever.
Exactly. So they could all be talking about the same group of people. It's just their different interpretations of what it could be, and they could be aliens.
I have a great example of that. I believe this wholeheartedly. This is the first conspiracy theory I've ever believed in. I believed in it when I was like 12. I think dragons are real. I think dragons are 100% real because every culture around the world has a form of dragon. I think they're dinosaurs. Dragons are just dinosaurs.
That's what I was just going to say. Look at dinosaurs. Is that not does not resemble a dragon in any way?
There's even different. Now it's come out. There were dinosaurs who were feathered. I think it depends on the region. I think dinosaurs that were in colder climates, or even in like the Americas, were feathered dinosaurs. As to where like, or maybe it was in China even, because China has the more traditional like artsy dragon, like the big wavy like red and green scaled dragon. So maybe those were feathered. Whereas the European ones are usually like scaled lizards. So like one of those popular flying dinosaur is the pterodactyl, right? Now we only know about the pterodactyl from bones, what we can discover, right? Their organs are gone, but there are bugs in where we live now, like that like give off this like gaseous like toxic thing that it's like hot, right? And it's not fire, but it burns like like a stink bug almost, like skunks. They give off this like this gaseous thing that like hurts humans, propels enemies. Back in the day, those things were a lot bigger and a lot more dangerous. Who's to say a pterodactyl wasn't shooting fire? You know what I mean? Pterodactyls might just be dragons, but
I see what you're saying. Because the actual living creature is gone, you can't know.
We don't know what it could do.
Yeah, I mean, all you got is the bones.
Right.
So,
okay,
and then
what you're saying.
our recreation of what was on top of those bones are all interpretations. That's not necessarily to say that they look like the way we think they do. So a pterodactyl could have looked more like a dragon.
We don't even know if they all look the same. Some of them could have fur, some of them couldn't. I definitely think there were dinosaurs who had some kind of mechanic where they would defend themselves weirdly. So definitely at least one of them had to shoot fire. I mean, it's just probable.
I was just trying to understand what you were saying at first because it was kind of long. So I was trying to break it down in my mind and being like, okay, you're saying that we don't know what they look like on the outside.
They didn't call them dinosaurs back then. They called them dragons, which isn't even much different of a word. Dinosaurs, dragons. Through time, they could have just translated differently. But even Native Americans had the firebird, which sounds mostly like a dragon,
Or a wyvern.
Yep.
Same thing. So does the dragon have 2 legs and wings, or does it have 4 legs and 2 wings?
Depends on the territory, I guess. I personally, I think dragons have 4 wings and no legs, 2 heads, and kind of like a helicopter spinning propeller. But
I say 4 legs, 2 wings.
Technically, a dragon and a wyvern. A dragon's supposed to have 4 legs and a set of wings, and a wyvern has 2 legs and wings that are kind of serve as hands too. But they're pretty much the same thing. Now, a drake, I think, it's completely different, and I think drakes were supposedly
a drake's
feathered.
more like a bird.
Yeah, they were more feathered. So, I mean, inspiration had to come from somewhere.
Right.
So. I mean,
Maybe
look at George R. Martin. He created an incredible universe, but he got inspired by something.
Maybe dragons are aliens. Maybe the dragons are the aliens.
Maybe we were the aliens.
They're not little gray people at all, but just big fuck all lizards that shoot fire.
I like that.
Right.
So the next theory is a darker one, and It's not even a
Just
theory.
going down.
It's not even a theory, really. It's kind of sad, but it's true. MK Ultra. If you don't know what that is, I believe right after the Cold War, or was it right before?
I do not know the time.
Somewhere around the long period Cold War era, America was basically setting up these little labs and different experiments.
Okay.
Oh, good. Okay.
Around the world, and they were just, I don't know how to say it, but they were just shoving LSD and hallucinogens and every other drug they get their hands on.
Let me give you a
into
little brief
patients.
description.
Yeah.
Okay. This is from history.com. MK Ultra was a top secret CIA project in which agency conducted hundreds of experiments, sometimes unwitting U.S. citizens, to access potential use of LSD, other drugs for mind control, information gathering, and psychological torture. Though MK Ultra lasted from 1953 until about 1973, details of the program didn't become public until 1975.
But they've proven that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They actually, most of the documents have been burned.
It was actually during the Cold War.
Yeah. They've either been burned or just drawn out with marker, but...
Wait, have you ever heard of not to get off the MK Ultra topic, but the Russian sleep experiment that's supposed to happen?
Same thing.
You see, I think that stuff has some relevance to it, because there's no telling what all kind of crazy stuff.
This was just the underground space race. Who can fuck up their country the worst?
Well, they were trying to take control, if they got any Soviet,
Right, the goal of it is if a soldier got captured, they wanted to have the soldier to be able to be brainwashed so that he couldn't physically give away any information to the other governments. But the way they did this is they would set up locations. They would have even hospitals and colleges take place with this, and they would just take patients who weren't even willing. They didn't sign up for it. They would just take patients who were out of their mind or didn't know any better, who didn't have families, who had terminal illnesses, all kinds of stuff, and they would be like, hey, come here, we're gonna help you with something. And when they would just take them, lock them in a room for hours, just shove LSD through their bloodstream, and then see what happened. It was terrible. There are survivors even who have spoken out about it, who've said that they still believe that it's going on today, Some people even believe, to go farther into it, what they were doing with MK Ultra has led into, with celebrities now, how they'll kind of you can see them zone out, and how some people believe celebrities are kind of part of the Illuminati and they're brainwashed and that kind of thing. They actually believe it's closely related to MK Ultra, where the testing they did on these subjects, they just use now on celebrities, where that's why they kind of zone out and look oriented a lot, in interviews and stuff. It's because they use the same things they did during MK Ultra.
I could believe that. That's a conspiracy theory that I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
I mean,
they've caught the government doing sketchy stuff before, so I could totally see that.
But that's the saddest thing to me about this one, is that MK Ultra is 100% real. They had to come out and say for legal reasons, yep, we did that.
Because didn't some of the survivors sue?
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing: a lot of the patients who would die had families that weren't really close to them and just put them away in these homes anyway, and they would just give their families a few $1,000s and be like, "Hey, shut up about it," and they would.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the scariest thing to me, is that our government, for years and years, was just torturing innocent people with things they knew would destroy their minds, And at the same time they were doing this, they were going school to school and doing presentations on why not to do LSD.
Yeah, that is interesting.
But yeah, I think it's, for anyone who trusts the government, I think that should be a wake-up call for you to research, whether you're Republican, Democrat, third party, anything. You should understand that your government doesn't really care about you, because at some point your ancestor...
In public schools, they were telling them not to do LSD and drugs.
Yeah.
They do that. I remember when they came around, don't do acid.
I love the South Park bit where they're if you want to be as cool as us, you can't do drugs, and they immediately go out and start snorting cocaine and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So they don't end up like those people.
My bad, my eyes.
No, you're good.
That's not my eye.
But yeah, this one's really sad. I know Stranger Things is based a lot off of MK Ultra. And the thing that scares me the most about how survivors think that it's still going on, I don't know anyone who would know more about it besides the testers, as far as what went on. So if they think it's still going on, who's to say it's not still going on,
That is kind of scary to think about, especially what you were saying about with the celebrities.
Yeah. Here's another thing. We're probably gonna get more into this, but there's tons of kids who go disappearing every year, and we don't know where they go. Of course, many people think it's from people kidnapping children and that kind of thing. But what if it's the government taking children because the kids got tested on during MK Ultra too? So what if it's these kids, disappearing from the government and they're just shooting LSD into them?
Yeah, mind control freaks me out. I don't like thinking about that.
Now here's something with MK Ultra. I don't remember. I think the game was called Polaris, maybe. But there was a video game during when this was happening, like an arcade cabinet game, or like right after MK Ultra.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Where they were using the arcade game to experiment on people.
Oh,
yeah.
They would go into arcades, like people with like the Men in Black style suit would go in, hook up like a game that was like just pure like black. It had no writing on it, and they would let kids come up and play it, and it had just tons of psychedelic colors and noises and stuff. And
it's
they
supposed to trigger the kids to do certain things. Yeah, I've heard about that.
So that's actually part of like MK Ultra is now this is more of a myth than a fact. No one has evidence of it. But I mean, we have very little evidence of MK Ultra, so that's not to say it's not real. But it is interesting to think about. Maybe they did put like an arcade because I mean, like who's like especially back then before Stranger Danger was so big. Who's gonna tell their kids like don't play that game? It's the government's trying to control your mind, But I think all that stuff's pretty spooky. I don't really I mean, of course, it's real. Of course, I believe in it. I just don't really like thinking about it too much because that's the scariest one. When you guys have any thoughts about MK Ultra? Or?
Mm-hmm.
I think I could see the arcade stuff, the LSD test. I mean, they've proven that stuff, and I could see that. The kids ones, I'm a little more skeptical about. I think at a point you do have to. I'm not gonna say draw a line, but I think that one's a little more outlandish.
That's Blake's theory.
It could happen.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it could happen. I'm not saying it's just no way that could actually happen, because I'm sure. I mean, if you go back to the Nazis once again, they did experiments on kids, especially twins, and a lot of Soviet and American, Cold War era experiments came from getting all these Nazi scientists. So what was to stop them from continuing that?
It is proven that MK Ultra they did use kids from MK Ultra.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't know if that's still doing that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think today. Let me rephrase it. I would like to think today we have become more modern, and I'm trying to think of how to word this. Our government has progressed away because we're not in this continuous Cold War with the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But could it still be happening? Of course. I mean, it still certainly could. But I'm not gonna agree with it or disagree with it. I would guess I'm gonna be more on the neutral boundary for that one.
Okay. And the last thing that we were gonna talk about now, this I want to say because it's a theory. We don't know if this one's true like MK Ultra, but if it's true, it's still going on, and it's a very serious topic that I don't want to take too lightly. But adrenochrome and the Hollywood elite and things like that. The theory of adrenochrome is you take children and torture them, and you can take a chemical out of their body called adrenochrome, which can help prolong life. It can help you feel youthful, give you energy, make you look younger, that kind of thing. And there's I want to say evidence. There's a lot of weird things that don't really they don't feel like coincidences when they happen so often together. So the first one that I know of was the Hillary Clinton Pizzagate, where they said they had information about Hillary Clinton, and they have this laptop by the police in New York have it, and they're looking through it, and the police from New York, from what I understand, and of course when you talk about modern era things like this, it gets real dodgy with knowing what's real and what's not, and what news is made up by who. But from what I understand, the New York Police Department came out and said we saw some fucked up shit on that computer. We saw Hillary Clinton killing kids and wearing their faces, and then the CIA got that computer and did their own investigation, and they said it was blank. There was nothing on that computer, and they deleted it and sent it away to the government. I believe, now again, I don't know for a fact, but I believe that the police chief of that police department passed away shortly after, which the theory, of course, is that they had him killed. And then it went into celebrities. It went into like the Hollywood elitist using adrenochrome to stay youthful, and one thing was like even COVID, linking in with this. But I don't get too much into that. But for example, Ellen. People have said Ellen DeGeneres looks very not youthful anymore ever since COVID because she's been on lockdown.
That's 100% true.
Yeah, she definitely looks worse.
Looks like a different person.
So that's, it's not, the theory that she looks worse, I guess, but that no one can prove it's adrenochrome, I guess, but.
I want to look it up now because
she looks horrible.
Like, she does look like a zombie almost.
But if they have that much power that they have an underground facility where they're harvesting adrenochrome, right, I would think they would be able to get it to somebody like Ellen. So.
Well, that's where I don't know how big it is. Is it a huge, like,
cult? The underground bunker thing, to me, that's like, with the whole Donald Trump thing, that's crazy. I think it's like more, not that.
That's where you start getting into the QAnon following stuff.
No, I don't believe that.
I've done a lot of research about the QAnon, which I won't start down that rabbit hole, but that's just my thing. Is like if it's that much of an underground,
yeah,
I would think they would be able to still distribute it, especially with the world lockdown. So
I agree. What also, it's not necessarily that they can't get it, like to Ellen, but rather they can't get it at all because kids are also on lockdown. So there's less kids getting like, I guess, taken. It's a weird thing to say, but so maybe they just don't have access to adrenochrome. And this is just a theory. I'm not trying to give my belief or whatever on it. I'm just saying what the theory is. And then the weirdest one to me is Tom Hanks. Because Tom Hanks, first there was the, I don't know what year it was, but there were the movie rewards pretty much. What are they called? The Oscars. And the host of the Oscars, it's a really funny guy, I forget his name, but he pretty much called everyone out, and the whole, like, audience of celebrities. He was like, I hate all of you fuckers. You're, like, all pedophiles, and you all, take part in these rituals and whatever. And, like, there were, like, 4 celebrities in the whole audience who were cracking up. Like, the guy who plays Kylo Ren in Star Wars was having a ball, but every other celebrity, you could tell, felt so uncomfortable. And then he pretty much said, I'm never gonna, of course you're not going to invite me back. I'm never going to get to do this again, but you're all pedophiles. And he, that was over. And then people started saying Tom Hanks, who was the main one making like weird faces during the Oscars. That people started claiming he was part of it. And even that the Wilson volleyball face is like the face of adrenochrome. Like that is a symbol for adrenochrome, the bloody face. Because you wear the child's like face after you cut it off, and people claimed he was in it. And like the day that he got accused, he got a citizenship to Greece and moved away, which is just incredibly weird. And of course, people said that's not why everything, but I mean, still, I would also
I would have to say if I had a bunch of rumors like that about me, I would probably try to. It's a crazy world now. I mean, look at after a lot of the previous events that have been happening. They've had politicians, people trying to kidnap them. So what's to say that somebody wouldn't try that on Tom Hanks? So I can understand having an escape plan.
That's a good point, but also he never denied it. This is another big thing. And I was gonna get into one more celebrity, but they never deny it. Not one celebrity, not Lady Gaga, or Chrissy Teigen, Tom Hanks, Hillary Clinton. Not one person who's been accused has ever just made a statement and said, I don't do this. You know what I mean?
Because they probably don't want to. I would think, and I'm not trying to cut you off, Dan, the more you don't entertain the idea, the better. I could see that. So.
See, to me, when Blake pointed that out to me, how they never deny it, like in the Christian belief, you can't deny God. Like someone has a gun to your head and say, "Do you believe in God?" You can't say no, or like you're not a real Christian. Whatever, that kind of stuff.
Same thing with Satan. Even with Satan, it's not even that you just can't. Like it's not just against your religion not to do it. You physically cannot. Like if you sold your soul to Satan, and someone asks you if you sold your soul to Satan, you physically cannot say no. Like you have to. Like by contract, I guess in that religion or whatever, you have to say yes. So
that's just part of the theory is that like. They can't deny it. publicly. You know what
Like, they physically cannot say, like, oh, I'm not doing that.
I mean, of course, it's like an outlandish theory. It's just some of the stuff that you see, it doesn't add up, and it's kind of weird, you know? That's why I like talking about it, because I think, like, if you look at certain things, you're like, that's kind of weird.
And the worst one to me, the absolute worst one, is Chrissy Teigen. Because the first, I think, instance someone saw this was when Obama was president, her and Pharrell Williams, is that his name? Is that right? Pharrell Williams?
No.
Her husband is
it's
not.
That, it's that other dude. Jimmy Legend.
Yeah.
John Legend.
Jimmy Legend. Sorry, Pharrell Williams. John Legend and Chrissy Teigen were at this, like, some kind of thing. And basically, they were getting interviewed. And she was like, yeah, we're going to Obama's house after this. And he was like, we're not talking about that. And she kept saying, yeah, we're going to go. You know, we're going to have a little party, get something to eat. Which doesn't sound too weird in its own, but she was being very awkward about it. And he, the whole time, was like, we're not going to talk about this. And he kept, like, shutting her up and, like, we were walking away from the cameras. And then it goes to her Twitter page where she would constantly, also she was on Ellen, who's also been accused. And she said some weird stuff.
They're on, John Legend and her were on Epstein's flight log.
Yeah, they were on the flight log, that's true. So a lot of this goes into with Epstein. Then on her Twitter, she's tweeted things like, that girl on that new show was so, you know, good looking I could eat her up. And she's referring to like a 12-year-old girl. She constantly says things like, I get why parents lock their kids in the basement and tie them to radiators now. Things like that. That just, it's like, especially if you claim to be like such a progressive person who's so like...
this is something she said. I found a tweet. She said, seeing little girls do splits half naked is just blank. ... I want to put myself in jail.
Things like that. She really tweets things like that, like on the regular. And...
Yeah, she's crazy.
She may just be weird.
No, she's straight up crazy.
She claims to be so progressive and like politically correct though, and it
Does
just
she?
Yeah, she kind of follows that lifestyle.
Celebrities do, but she seems insane.
And it just seems so weird. And I'm not even gonna talk about it because it's not really a good topic to bring up. But anyway,
What?
She has more stuff.
What?
I guess I'll talk about it. I want just a disclaimer.
Oh.
I'm not making fun of her. I really am not. I'm not trying to like badmouth her right now. I'm just gonna say what I know about this.
Things she says are weird. You can say
no,
that.
not that. No,
What's
it's deeper.
to say?
She got pregnant and she had a miscarriage, and she took photos and everything of it. And I'm not saying I don't believe this. I personally do not believe this. It's a little dark.
Oh, okay, I see.
But people believe that they actually did not have a miscarriage, and they took that kid that she gave birth to and used it for adrenochrome. Now that one's a little dark for me.
Yeah,
I'm not poking fun at that.
And see, the people that make all these claims, if that's the same people, see, that's where the sources, to me, that discredits that right there, because that's
but
very...
That's what a lot of people do when they see conspiracies. They take like the crazies.
There are the
crazies.
crazies.
And see the other part.
I think it's good to start with her being on Epstein's flight log, because that's
that's
bad. A fact.
But at the same time, though, just because one of your friends or your flight log, just because you're associated with somebody doesn't mean you're guilty, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's weird though, the connection between, like, why was Epstein? What does he have to do with John Legend, like a R&B singer, like a rich New Yorker,
right?
Like, how did they cross paths? That's just, and then
I do agree.
And then the flight log to the island with the little kids. That's what it's like.
I'm not trying to poke fun at her because that's a very serious topic, and I'm not trying to
miscarriage is not funny. No.
But there is a lot of coincidences where she said terrible things about kids on Twitter. She even deleted her Twitter for a while and claimed it was because of negative energy, which is probably true because I mean she got a lot of negative energy, but she got back on recently and. I do think it's weird how much stuff she says on Twitter that she shouldn't be saying.
She apologized for it though. I mean, I give her that. She just apologized and said, she didn't mean it like that, stuff like that.
And it's
you got to put yourself in these people's shoes though. I mean, too, they're constantly being criticized, ridiculed. People are watching them, so.
And I also think like years ago, poking fun at that kind of thing was more acceptable.
I mean, and if I got on Twitter and said something about I'd love to eat up this 12-year-old because she's so cute, I mean, nobody would probably even bat an eye at that, you know what I mean? Because it's B. But when you're a famous celebrity and you say that, you could mean it one way, but then there's 20 people that are going, oh, well, she means it this other way.
Right. Like,
just to, stir the shit pot. So
I think if you see that and then you see her with, being associated to Jeffrey Epstein, then that's when your mind starts turning. You're like, wait, hold on, that's kind of weird.
She did
say she would eat a human, too.
Yeah, that's what she said on Ellen. She said, so this is the thing that bothers me. This is the thing that bothers me is it's not that one of those celebrities had a weird situation, right? It's that each person who individually got called out for being part of this underground cult all have weird incidences. Like, not one of them has been found, like, squeaky clean of, like, well, I can prove that I'm not. You know what I mean? You know, it's just...
I think that's the thing is, it's a conspiracy, because it's a conspiracy, we have no idea. It's just, shit's weird. That's what I call it. Shit's weird, we don't know. It's just weird.
And to bring up one more thing, then this is also, I think, pretty much true. Like, it's not true in the fact that it's gone to court, I think, but it's true. I do believe this one. Wayfair got in trouble, if you don't know about this. They were selling furniture on their website, which they're an online furniture website. They're selling furniture for outlandishly high prices, like $1 million. And the furniture, instead of being a regular furniture name, would change the name to like a female name, like well, even boys' names too, I guess. But they would have like names like Rebecca and Hannah and stuff like that as the furniture's name. And the idea was that because there's so many missing kids that they just can't find today. The theory is that Wayfair actually is an underground like business that sells kids to people, and
human trafficking.
Yeah, human trafficking, right.
We don't know how, but that's just a theory.
And I mean, the day that this came out, within hours of this all coming out, I mean, like you said, moving countries, getting off Twitter is one thing because of like negative feedback that you don't want to take part in. But the CEO who's responsible for running Wayfair retired, quit, and like fell off the face of the earth.
That's crazy.
Instead of okay, if you're a company, not if you're a human like that's a celebrity, but if you're a company, like let's say Amazon, and someone just says Amazon sells people, they are part of human trafficking, the CEO of Amazon would immediately come out and make a statement and said Amazon does not take part in human trafficking. That's what Amazon would do. There's just no question. The Wayfair did not do this.
You would hope.
Instead, all their high ups just quit.
That's crazy.
So that is almost 100% true. And they just where I work, I saw a commercial in the break room for a Wayfair thing. So like, there's nothing happening. That business is still going. I don't know if they still take part in that. I'm sure they're scared as hell to ever do it again. But that still happens, and the company's still fine, I guess.
I'm sure it's not fine. It's probably why I saw a commercial.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're advertising because people don't use them anymore. But like, it's sad that company's allowed to even run. Like. We should.
It was never proven. You can't shut a business down if you don't have 100% proof. It's just weird.
I wonder how much we looked into it, though. I think as like a people, like you were talking about earlier, like as we've advanced and become more moral and a better people.
If you believe into like elitists and stuff like that, they could be tied into that. So of course they're gonna help it keep covered up.
So that's the thing, right? Is like.
Or it's just not true, and it's just a coincidence.
If all the higher ups want a chance to prove to themselves that, or us, or whoever, the public, that they're not these evil people who do all these rituals or whatever. The perfect opportunity came when they could have all come together and shut down Wayfair, or they could, like at any given moment they could come together and stop another evil organization. But it seems they rather sweep it under the rug than actually do anything. Even with like Google, Twitter, Facebook, you can't even search like Wayfair. You can't search adrenochrome. Instead of
You can, but you just don't get it. You don't get everything.
Now, I've tried to look it up the other day, just was thinking about this video. And if you try and look up adrenochrome on Twitter, you'll see jokes about it. Like, if you see, like, someone will take a picture of an old person who maybe isn't looking the best, and be like, they forgot their adrenochrome today, but you won't see any real post about it anymore. Like, it's been filtered out to just be a meme now.
Oh, it's definitely filtered. Like,
they
filter everything, though.
If the government really
Google, if I'm not mistaken, Google come out and said that they're trying to do, like, the social media sites and filter out a lot of the... because a lot of the adrenochrome stuff is tied in with the Q stuff, the QAnon stuff, and they're trying to,
See, that's the thing. You could Google Trump, and it's just like every single post is like a negative Trump post. So it's like there's nobody who wrote anything positive whatsoever about Trump.
That's true.
Which is like, I mean, it got frustrating.
Twitter is. I'm not trying to take a side because I'm not Republican or Democrat. Twitter has been caught with like. If you say anything positive about Republicans, no matter how many people say it, no matter how many people tweet it, or how much it should be trending, if they believe it's like pro-Republican, they will not let it be on Twitter. They will cancel the hashtag. They will make sure it's not on the trending page, which is wrong because like freedom of speech, whether it's like what you're saying is intelligent or not, or right or wrong, freedom of speech should be freedom of speech, even if it's on Twitter. Twitter, like has always been a place where you should go and be able to like say what you want to say, and then you'll get the backlash from the public because you said it. But you shouldn't be censored unless you break some kind of guideline. And unless you like specifically break the guideline that makes sense, you shouldn't be censored just because you said something, even if it's a stupid thing.
Yeah, but if you get on some of these social media platforms and you say you get on there and you're like, I don't know, fuck everybody in this state, you should just go attack and kill everybody in this state. Now you're inciting violence. So,
that's one thing I think
that's
you
against
can
the guidelines.
you can delete that, but you can't even like, for example, when the election was going on, right? And the election should have been like, even like, no matter how you think about it, it should have been pretty split. And I'm not saying, I think of course Republicans probably use Twitter less because it's a heavy Democratic app. But even still, I know with the election going on, there should have been plenty of people on Twitter talking about like Donald Trump, or at least in like a positive manner in some way, or at least the Republican Party, whatever. You couldn't find it. It just didn't exist on Twitter. It was all.
But I've seen pro Republican tweets. People have showed me on.
Do you follow them or?
No, I don't have social media. I've seen that. I've seen people show me
that it's on there. It's not that's not on there. You can't. It won't go on the trending page, or it won't be a hashtag you can look up. It'll be like censored out to where you can't find it unless you follow that person. So like if I follow someone, I can see what they tweet. But if I just go to the page, it'll be all like.
If you like search it in, is what he's saying.
All pro Biden or pro Democratic stuff.
But you just said that Twitter was a very.
It is, yeah. So I again, of course, take it with a grain of salt. Who knows, But I would think on election day, it would be at least enough discussion where Trump would have been like in a positive light. It'd been a hashtag or a trend somewhere.
I almost think that people who get on Twitter are going to Twitter because when they go to Facebook, they see the red. You know what I mean? When I'm on Facebook, that's all I see.
I could see that.
And
having a more social media. I mean, it's just like Fox and CNN.
Right.
Same idea. So I could.
That's what I
see both ways. I'm not debunking anything.
Right.
I'm just trying to understand.
And
I don't have social media, so
Facebook's wrong too because I hate seeing like nothing but pro-Republican, like don't wear a mask or you're a moron kind of stuff too. I don't like any of it. I just think that like neither of them should cancel one or the other opposing sides. I think. As long as you don't break guidelines, even when you type in adrenochrome, like if you, that's not breaking a guideline if you talk about it. Of course, if you, I think, say anything negative, like too far or wrong, you can be censored. But if you're just bringing up a general discussion, like if I asked you on Facebook, like, what do you think of adrenochrome? That would get canceled immediately. I just think that's wrong. I think everyone on any platform should have.
You're saying you don't think they should restrict like open conversations.
Right. Even, and I'll say this, I'm not like a huge I think, I don't know how to say it. I don't hate Donald Trump for the reasons a lot of people hate him. I do have some things I like that he's done. He's not by any means a perfect president, but I don't think by any means he was as bad as a lot of people make him out to be. I think he was just as terrible as a lot of the other presidents we've ever had, and they're all pretty bad. But I do think it was wrong that Twitter blocked him. Because even though they claim it was because of the raid on the White House, Twitter couldn't prove that. And I don't think if Twitter has a real legitimate reason, I don't think Twitter should have banned him for absolutely no reason. That was wrong. The same thing happened to Joe Biden. Whether or not you like Joe Biden, if he did something that you couldn't prove and you just didn't like that you thought he did it, you should, even if we know he did it, but we can't prove it, you should not ban Joe Biden off of Twitter either. You shouldn't. That's misusing your power.
I can see both sides of that. Like the, extreme,
right.
Not extreme, and that's crazy. I see all sides. I feel myself as a neutral person. I see the crazies of both sides. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you look at just that, but with everything.
But this has been the most serious podcast we've ever done.
It got serious in the last 10 minutes.
We started this talking about the Egyptian ghost of the Titanic. Well, I think that's pretty much everything. Anybody have anything to add? Any last topics?
Ooh.
One thing I do want to say. Go ahead.
I love Mandela effects. That's my most interest. I wish we would have talked about that.
We'll do another episode. We'll talk about those.
Yeah, I love Mandela effects. I think those are very interesting.
Someday we'll do an episode with Mandela effects. But one thing I do want to say, just a closing statement. Besides MK Ultra, because that's real. The rest of them, that was real. The rest of these have all been conspiracies. We don't know. No one really knows. That's why they're conspiracies. We're not experts on the subject either. Like I said, me and Evan got this idea by sitting down and watching YouTube for like 15 minutes. So,
It's just shit we got in our head that we've seen on social media pretty much.
I do think you should go research this for yourself if you're interested. Don't take anything I've said or any of us have said to heart. And, I'm out of water. Son of a bitch. And
so what you're saying is don't be sheeple. Do your own research.
Right.
Exactly. Don't just listen to what
somebody tells you. Yes, exactly.
And
I
also,
think it's just like,
and I think at the end of the day, we can all agree upon that one.
Yeah.
and also don't hate on someone's idea. Like regardless if they're Republican, Democrat, this, that, whatever, they believe in conspiracies. If you think these are stupid, don't go tell someone that you think their ideas are stupid because you don't really know either, you know?
That's the beautiful part of this country is you're supposed to be able to sit down and have a decent, respectable conversation with each other and not hate each other at the end of the day.
There's nothing beautiful about this godforsaken country.
Well, that's one thing that we could have a discussion on.
Well, until next week, this has been Podcast for the Boys. I hope we didn't offend anyone too hard, and we'll see you next week. Bye.